Maya Thompson walked through the bright hallways of Atlanta Memorial Hospital with purpose in her steps. Her colorful scrubs and white sneakers made soft squeaking sounds against the clean floor as she headed to the rehabilitation wing. As a physical therapist for the past 5 years, she loved helping people recover and find their strength again. But this Monday morning would bring something different into her life, something she never saw coming. "Maya, we have a new patient in room 205, Sarah," the head nurse, called out as she passed by. "He came in last week after a car accident, spinal cord injury. He's been—" Sarah lowered her voice, a bit difficult with other staff. Maya nodded, already thinking about how to approach this new case. She had worked with many patients who felt angry or frustrated after accidents changed their lives. After checking her clipboard, she saw the patient's name: James Cooper, 32 years old, software engineer. When Maya entered room 205, she found a man sitting in a wheelchair, staring out the window. The morning sunlight showed his strong profile and the tension in his shoulders. He didn't turn to look at her right away. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper. I'm Maya Thompson, and I'll be your physical therapist," she said warmly, moving to stand where he could see her. James Cooper finally turned his head, and Maya saw deep brown eyes filled with both intelligence and pain. He wore a plain blue hospital gown, but something about the way he held himself told her he was used to being in charge of situations, not stuck in a hospital bed. "Another therapist?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of frustration. "I've already told the others. I know what I'm dealing with. I write code for a living. I've researched everything about my condition." Maya pulled up a chair and sat down, putting herself at his eye level. This was something she always did with patients in wheelchairs. It helped create connection and respect. "That's good that you've done your research," she said calmly. "It means you understand the journey ahead. But knowing about something and doing it are two different things. Like coding. Reading about it isn't the same as writing a program, right?" James's eyebrows went up slightly, surprised by her response. A small smile touched his lips. "Fair point," he admitted. Maya looked at his chart again. "I see here you're working on some major artificial intelligence projects. Want to tell me about them while we do some initial assessments?" For the next hour, as Maya carefully tested his range of motion and remaining sensitivity, James talked about his work. His whole face lit up when he explained how his team was developing AI systems to help make technology more accessible. Even though he was clearly in pain sometimes during the assessment, he kept talking, especially when Maya asked intelligent questions about his work. "You actually understand what I'm talking about," he said, sounding surprised again. Maya smiled as she made notes in his chart. "I may work with bodies instead of computers, but I like keeping up with technology, especially since a lot of new rehabilitation equipment uses AI these days." As she worked, Maya noticed things about James that weren't in his medical chart. How he used humor to hide his fear. The way his hands, though sometimes shaky, moved with precision when he demonstrated coding concepts in the air. How his eyes showed both determination and uncertainty about his future. "Same time tomorrow?" Maya asked as she finished the session. "We can talk about quantum computing while working on your upper body strength." James actually laughed. A real laugh that changed his whole face. "You know about quantum computing too?" "Maybe, maybe not. You'll have to show up tomorrow to find out," Maya teased, then immediately wondered why she was being playful with a patient. She needed to keep things professional. "I'll be here," James said softly. "It's not like I can go anywhere else right now." Maya paused at the door. "You know, Mr. Cooper, some of the strongest people I know use wheelchairs. They go everywhere and do amazing things. This is just the beginning of a new chapter for you, not the end of your story." As Maya left room 205, she felt different somehow. She had worked with many patients, but something about James Cooper's mix of vulnerability and strength touched her heart. Of course, she would keep things strictly professional. She was his therapist, nothing more. She had no idea that this ordinary Monday morning had just changed both their lives forever. Walking back to her office, Maya reminded herself to focus on her other patients. She had 5 more appointments today. She couldn't keep thinking about the intelligent eyes and gentle smile of the man in room 205. But somehow, she knew this patient was going to be different from all the others. 2 weeks passed quickly at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. Maya found herself looking forward to her sessions with James Cooper more than she wanted to admit. Every day at 10 a.m., she would walk into room 205 with a new topic to discuss while they worked on his physical therapy. Today, James was already sitting up in his wheelchair when she entered, typing rapidly on a laptop balanced on a hospital tray. His fingers moved across the keyboard with amazing speed, his face focused on the screen. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper," Maya said, setting down her therapy equipment. "Writing some important code?" James looked up, and his serious expression changed to a warm smile. "Maya, please call me James. After 2 weeks of torture, therapy, I think we can drop the formalities." Maya laughed, but she felt a small flutter in her stomach at his smile. "Okay, James, but this isn't torture, it's progress. Show me what you're working on first." James turned his laptop so she could see. On the screen were complex lines of code, but also a 3D model of what looked like robotic legs. "This is my side project," he explained, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "I'm developing an AI system that could help control advanced prosthetics and mobility devices. Started it before my accident, actually. Funny how life works sometimes." Maya pulled up her usual chair, genuinely interested. "That's amazing, James. Have you always worked on projects to help others?" "Not always," he admitted, closing the laptop. "Used to just chase the money, creating software for big tech companies. But about a year ago, I met a young girl at a tech conference. She was brilliant at coding but couldn't use regular computer inputs because of her disability. Made me start thinking differently about my work." As they talked, Maya began their daily exercises. She supported his arms as he worked with light weights, helping his body stay strong while his lower half healed as much as it could. She noticed he didn't wince as much today when they moved. "You're getting stronger," she said encouragingly. "How's the pain level?" "Better when you're here," James said quietly, then quickly added, "the exercises help. The other therapists, they're good, but they don't make it interesting like you do. Don't tell them, but I actually look forward to our sessions now." Maya felt her cheeks warm slightly. She needed to keep things professional, but there was something about James that made it difficult. The way he mixed intelligence with humility, how he was working to help others even from his hospital bed, his smile that seemed to be just for her. Earth to Maya. James waved his hand playfully. "Did I say something wrong?" No, Maya said quickly. "Just thinking about your progress. You know, most patients don't work on complex coding projects during their recovery. You're pretty special. Your dedication is special." James's face turned serious. "Can I ask you something, Maya? And you can say no." Maya's heart beat a little faster. "Of course. When I get out of here next week, would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? Not as therapist and patient, but just as people?" Maya froze. This was against all her professional rules. She never dated patients, current or former. It could cause so many problems. But before she could answer, Sarah, the nurse, burst into the room. "Maya, emergency in room 198. We need you now." Maya jumped up. "I'm sorry, James. I have to go. We'll talk tomorrow." She rushed out of the room, her mind spinning. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for a moment, taking deep breaths. What was she thinking? She couldn't date a patient. People would talk. They would say she took advantage of someone vulnerable. They would question her professionalism. But another voice in her head whispered, James wasn't just any patient. He was brilliant, kind, and stronger than most people knew. When they talked, she forgot about his wheelchair. She just saw him, his mind, his heart, his dreams. Maya straightened up and headed to room 198. She had to focus on her job right now, but she couldn't stop thinking about James' question, his hopeful expression, and the way her heart had wanted to say yes immediately. Tomorrow, she would have to give him an answer. Tonight, she would have to decide if she was brave enough to break her own rules for a chance at something that felt more real than anything she had ever known. Because deep down, she knew that James Cooper had become more than just another patient, no matter how hard she tried to pretend otherwise. Maya didn't sleep well that night. She tossed and turned in her bed, thinking about James's invitation and what she should do. When morning came, she made her decision. She would be honest with him. At exactly 10 a.m., she walked into room 205 for their last therapy session. James was dressed in regular clothes today, a crisp blue button-down shirt and black pants. He looked different, more like the successful software engineer he was than a hospital patient. "You look nice," Maya said, then quickly added, "Ready to go home tomorrow?" James wheeled his chair closer to her. "Maya, about yesterday, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. We can forget I asked about coffee." Maya took her usual seat next to him. "Actually, I want to answer your question. But first, we need to finish your final therapy session properly." They worked together for the next hour, reviewing all the exercises he would need to continue at home. Maya noticed how much stronger his arms had become, how smoothly he could now maneuver his wheelchair. But mostly, she noticed how much she would miss these daily meetings. When they finished the exercises, Maya sat down again. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. "About that coffee," she said, "the answer is yes, but we need to wait 2 weeks." James's whole face lit up. "Really? Why 2 weeks?" "Hospital rules. I can't date former patients for 2 weeks after their release." And Maya took a deep breath. "We should talk about what this means. People might judge us. They might say things." James moved his wheelchair even closer to her chair. "Maya, I've learned something important since my accident. Life is too short to care about what other people think. When I'm with you, I forget about the wheelchair. You make me feel whole." Maya felt tears in her eyes. "You are whole, James. A wheelchair doesn't change who you are. But my mother, my friends, they might not understand." "Then we'll help them understand," James said firmly. "I'm not asking you to marry me, Maya. Just coffee. We can take it slow, see where it goes." 2 weeks later, Maya stood nervously outside the Blue Cup Cafe. She had changed her outfit 3 times before choosing a simple yellow sundress. James had texted that he was already inside. When she walked in, she saw him at a table near the window. He had chosen a spot where his wheelchair wouldn't block anyone's path. He was wearing another nice shirt, and his hair was neatly styled. When he saw her, his smile made her forget all her worries. "You look beautiful," he said as she sat down. They talked for hours. James told her about growing up in Chicago, about his dreams of making technology that could help people with disabilities. Maya shared stories about her family in Atlanta, her passion for healing, and her secret love of jazz music. "You like jazz?" James asked excitedly. "There's a great jazz club downtown. They have excellent wheelchair access. Would you? Would you like to go there next weekend?" Maya found herself saying yes without hesitation. As they left the cafe, a few people stared at them. Maya noticed, but for the first time, she didn't care. "Can I tell you something?" James said as they reached her car. "These past 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I missed our talks." "I missed them too," Maya admitted. "My other patients aren't nearly as interesting." James laughed, then grew serious. "Maya, I know this won't be easy. People will talk. They'll think you're with me out of pity, or they'll think I'm not good enough for you. But I want you to know, I see you, not just as the kind therapist who helped me, but as an amazing woman who makes me want to be better." Maya felt tears in her eyes again, but this time they were happy tears. "And I see you, James. Not as a patient or someone in a wheelchair, but as the wonderful man you are." As she drove home that evening, Maya felt lighter than she had in weeks. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Her mother would worry, her friends might not understand at first, but sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even when the mind tries to make things complicated. And her heart was telling her that James Cooper was someone special, someone worth breaking rules for, someone worth fighting for. 6 months passed like a beautiful dream for Maya and James. They spent every weekend together, discovering their favorite restaurants, attending jazz concerts, and sharing quiet moments in the park. Maya learned to ignore the curious stares from strangers, focusing instead on James's brilliant mind and kind heart. One sunny Saturday morning, James called Maya with an unusual request. "Let's go to Savannah for the weekend," he said, his voice excited. "I've already booked an accessible hotel room near the historic district." Maya was surprised. James usually planned things carefully because of his wheelchair needs. So spontaneous. "What's the occasion?" "Can't I surprise my girlfriend?" James laughed. "Pack something nice for dinner tomorrow night." The drive to Savannah took 4 hours. They talked and laughed the whole way, with Maya driving and James playing DJ with her car's music system. When they arrived, the historic city welcomed them with its beautiful oak trees covered in Spanish moss. Their hotel room had a perfect view of Forsyth Park. After settling in, they spent the afternoon exploring the city's accessible pathways. James had researched everything in advance, making sure his wheelchair could navigate the historic district's brick sidewalks. "You're quiet today," Maya said as they watched the sunset from a riverside restaurant. "Everything okay?" James smiled mysteriously. "Just thinking about how much my life has changed since I met you. Remember when I was that angry patient in room 205? Maya reached across the table and took his hand. "You were never just a patient to me. Even then, I saw something special in you." The next evening, James suggested they visit one of Savannah's historic squares before dinner. He chose Johnson Square, the city's oldest square. The space was beautiful in the early evening light, with benches arranged around a central fountain. As they found a quiet spot near the fountain, Maya noticed James seemed nervous. His hands fidgeted with something in his pocket. "Maya," he said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." Maya's heart started beating faster. James moved his wheelchair closer to her bench. "These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life," he continued. "Before my accident, I was just focused on success and money. Then everything changed. I thought my life was over when I ended up in that hospital room." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But then you walked in. You didn't see a broken man in a wheelchair. You saw me. You challenged me. You made me laugh when I wanted to give up." James pulled a small black box from his pocket. Maya's eyes widened. "But before I open this box," he said, "there's something else you need to know. I've been working on a secret project at my company. We developed a new kind of exoskeleton technology, something that might help me stand and walk for short periods." Maya gasped. "James, that's amazing." He shook his head. "No, you're amazing. Because even though this technology might change my life, I wanted to do this while still in my wheelchair. I wanted you to know that I'm asking you this as I am right now, not with promises of what might be." James opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. "Maya Thompson, you taught me that love knows no bounds, that sometimes life's biggest challenges bring the greatest gifts. Will you marry me?" Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks. Around them, a small crowd had gathered, watching silently. But Maya didn't see them. She only saw James, his eyes full of love and hope. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." The crowd burst into applause as Maya leaned down to kiss James. He slipped the ring onto her finger with slightly shaking hands. "I love you," James said, wiping away his own tears, wheelchair and all. "I love you too," Maya replied, "just as you are." Later that night, as they celebrated at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, Maya couldn't stop looking at her ring. But more than the diamond's sparkle, she was dazzled by the joy in James's eyes. "You know," she said, "you didn't have to tell me about the exoskeleton project tonight. It wouldn't have changed my answer." James took her hand. "I know. That's exactly why I had to tell you, because you love me for who I am, not what I might become. And that's why I know we'll face whatever comes next together." The news of Maya and James' engagement spread quickly. While the happy couple glowed with joy, not everyone shared their excitement. Maya's mother, Patricia Thompson, sat at her kitchen table, her face filled with worry as she talked to her daughter. "Baby girl, are you sure about this?" Patricia asked, stirring her coffee slowly. "Marriage is hard enough without extra challenges. Have you really thought about what this means?" Maya took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I love him. James is brilliant, kind, and he makes me happy. His wheelchair doesn't change any of that. But what about children? What about your future? Who will take care of him?" Patricia's questions came out in a rush. "James doesn't need anyone to take care of him, Mom. He's independent, successful, and his company is doing amazing things. And as for children," Maya smiled, "we'll figure that out together when the time comes." Across town, James was having his own family discussion. His parents, Robert and Susan Cooper, visited his accessible apartment for dinner. His mother helped serve the food while his father paced nervously. "Son," Robert finally said, "we love Maya. She's wonderful, but are you being fair to her? She's young, beautiful." "Dad, stop," James interrupted firmly. "Maya loves me for who I am. She's not settling or sacrificing. We make each other better. Susan touched her husband's arm. Robert, remember what the doctor said about James's new project, the exoskeleton. This isn't about walking, James said, wheeling himself to the table. Maya said yes before she knew about that. She loves me, wheelchair and all. That's what matters. Despite these family tensions, Maya and James threw themselves into wedding planning. They chose an accessible venue, a beautiful garden with paved paths and a covered pavilion. Maya went dress shopping with her best friend Sarah, who had become one of their strongest supporters. You look like a princess, Sarah said as Maya tried on a flowing white gown. Maya twirled in front of the mirror. James won't be able to see it until the wedding day. I can't wait to surprise him. Meanwhile, James worked with his engineering team during the day and helped with wedding plans in the evening. His company's exoskeleton project was progressing well, but he kept most details secret, even from Maya. He wanted their wedding day surprise to be perfect. One evening, as they looked through flower arrangements at their apartment, Maya noticed James seemed distracted. "What's wrong?" she asked, touching his hand. James sighed. "I just got off the phone with the dance instructor. She's never worked with someone in a wheelchair before. She's not sure about our first dance." Maya knelt beside his wheelchair. "Hey, look at me. I don't care if we dance standing up, sitting down, or spinning in circles. As long as I'm dancing with you, it will be perfect." James pulled her into a hug, his eyes wet. "How did I get so lucky?" The weeks flew by filled with cake tastings, invitation selections, and venue visits. Every choice had to consider accessibility, but Maya and James turned it into an adventure rather than a challenge. They chose music that meant something to them, planned a menu that combined both their family traditions, and decided on a small, intimate ceremony with just close friends and family. 2 days before the wedding, Maya's mother finally had a change of heart. She came to Maya's apartment carrying a small blue box. "This was your grandmother's," Patricia said, opening the box to reveal a delicate pearl necklace. "She always said it should be worn by a bride who knows what true love is." She looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "I was wrong, baby girl. The way James looks at you, that's real love." Maya hugged her mother tight. "Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me." That night, Maya called James to tell them about her mother's gesture. "Everything's coming together," she said happily. "Just 2 more days." "I can't wait to make you my wife," James replied softly. "I have a feeling our wedding day will be more magical than anyone expects." Maya smiled, not knowing just how right he was. As she fell asleep that night, she thought about how far they had come from their first meeting in room 205. Sometimes the best love stories don't follow the usual path, they create their own. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather, sunny skies and a gentle breeze that made the garden's flowers dance. Maya stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by her mother, Sarah, and 2 other bridesmaids. Her white dress flowed like a river of silk, and her grandmother's pearl necklace gleamed at her throat. "You look like an angel," Patricia said, carefully adjusting Maya's veil. Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she pinned it in place. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "James is going to cry when he sees you." "No crying." Maya laughed, though her own eyes were getting wet. "We all spent too long on this makeup." In another room across the garden, James sat in his wheelchair while his best friend Mike helped him with his bow tie. James wore a sharp black tuxedo specially tailored to look perfect while seated. His hands kept moving to his pocket, checking for the 20th time that a small USB drive was still there. "Nervous?" Mike asked, straightening James's collar. "Not about marrying Maya," James smiled. "Just hoping everything works for the surprise." Robert Cooper knocked on the door and entered, looking emotional in his own tuxedo. "Son, your mother wants to know if you're ready. The guests are all seated." James took a deep breath. "I've been ready since the day I met Maya." In the garden, 100 chairs were arranged in neat rows along the paved pathway. White and purple flowers decorated every surface, and soft music played from hidden speakers. James's engineering team had quietly set up some special equipment behind the flower-covered arch where the ceremony would take place, but most guests thought it was just sound equipment. James wheeled himself into position at the front of the aisle. His wheelchair had been decorated with small flowers that matched the garden's theme. As he waited, he looked out at their gathered families. Maya's large extended family on one side, his smaller but equally emotional family on the other. The music changed, and everyone stood. First came the bridesmaids in purple dresses, then little Emma, Maya's niece, spreading flower petals along the paved path. And then, Maya appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. James felt his breath catch in his throat. She was more beautiful than he had ever imagined, her dress sparkling in the sunlight, her smile brighter than any star. As she walked toward him, James saw tears in her eyes that matched his own. When Maya reached him, her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in James's. The minister smiled at them both and began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Maya and James had written their own vows. James went first, his voice strong and clear despite his emotions. Maya Thompson, you came into my life when I thought everything was darkness. You showed me that love doesn't see limitations, only possibilities. You never tried to fix me because you knew I wasn't broken. Today, I promise to love you, support your dreams, make you laugh, and be your partner in all of life's adventures. Maya wiped away a tear before speaking her vows. James Cooper, you taught me what real strength looks like. Your heart, your mind, and your spirit amaze me every day. I promise to be your equal partner, your biggest supporter, your best friend, and your love for all our days. Whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. The minister led them through exchanging rings. James's hands were steady as he placed the gold band on Maya's finger. Maya's hands shook slightly as she did the same for him. By the power vested in me, the minister said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Maya leaned down as James reached up, their lips meeting in a kiss full of love and promise. Their guests burst into applause and cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, the minister announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cooper. As their families clapped and cried, James squeezed Maya's hand. In just a few minutes during their first dance, he would reveal his surprise. But for now, he simply savored this perfect moment with his bride, both of their hearts so full of joy they felt like they might burst. Maya looked down at her new husband, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. In that moment, she knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. This was just the beginning of their greatest adventure. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception area where tables surrounded a wooden dance floor. Maya and James sat at their sweetheart table, accepting congratulations and sharing loving glances. Maya noticed James seemed both excited and nervous, checking his watch repeatedly. Everything okay? She whispered, squeezing his hand. Perfect, he smiled. Just waiting for the right moment. The DJ's voice came over the speakers. And now, it's time for the couple's first dance. But first, the groom has a special announcement. James pulled the small USB drive from his pocket and handed it to Mike, who hurried to connect it to a laptop near the DJ station. Then James took the microphone, his voice steady as he addressed their guests. Thank you all for being here today. Before our first dance, I want to share something with my beautiful wife. He turned to Maya. Sweetheart, remember when I told you about my company's exoskeleton project? Well, it wasn't just a project. It was my wedding gift to you. Maya's eyes widened as James's engineering team wheeled out what looked like a slim metallic frame. Dr. Sarah Chen, James's lead engineer, stepped forward with a tablet in her hands. For the past year, James continued, we've been developing a revolutionary neural integrated exoskeleton. It responds to brain signals, allowing people with spinal cord injuries to stand and take steps. Today, we're ready for the first public demonstration. Gasps filled the room. Maya covered her mouth with her hands, tears forming in her eyes. But James wasn't finished. Maya, I want you to know, this doesn't change who I am. I'm still the same man you fell in love with, the same man you married today. This technology isn't about fixing something broken. It's about creating new possibilities, not just for me, but for thousands of others. Dr. Chen and another engineer helped attach the sleek exoskeleton over James's pants. It was nothing like the bulky medical devices Maya had seen before. This was slim, almost elegant, with subtle lights glowing along its frame. The system connects directly to James's neural implant, Dr. Chen explained to the amazed crowd. It reads his brain signals and translates them into movement commands. James pressed a button on the armrest of his wheelchair. The exoskeleton hummed softly. Slowly, Carefully, James began to rise from his chair. Maya stood up too, her heart pounding as she watched her husband stand for the first time since his accident. The room was completely silent. James stood tall, the exoskeleton supporting his weight. He was eye to eye with Maya now, and both of them had tears streaming down their faces. "May I have this dance?" he asked softly. The DJ started playing their song, At Last by Etta James. James took one careful step forward, then another. The exoskeleton moved smoothly with him as he reached for Maya's hand. They began to dance slowly, James's movements gentle but sure. Maya could feel him trembling slightly with the effort, but his smile was radiant. Their guests watched in awe as the newlyweds swayed to the music. "I can't believe you did this," Maya whispered. "The best part isn't even the dancing," James said. "Tomorrow, we're announcing that my company received major funding to make this technology available to everyone who needs it. The patents will be open source, so other companies can build on our work." Maya looked into her husband's eyes, seeing not just love, but also fierce determination. This was the man she had fallen in love with, someone who turned his own challenges into opportunities to help others. As they danced, their families watched with tear-stained faces. Patricia Thompson held on to her husband, finally understanding the depth of her new son-in-law's character. Robert and Susan Cooper beamed with pride at their son's achievement. When the song ended, James carefully sat back in his wheelchair, the engineers helping him remove the exoskeleton. Maya sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "That was amazing," she said. "But you know what's even more amazing? The man I married, your brilliant mind, your generous heart. Standing or sitting, you take my breath away." James kissed her softly. "This is just the beginning, Mrs. Cooper. Together, we're going to change so many lives." As their guests surrounded them with congratulations and questions about the technology, Maya looked at her new husband with pride. She had married a man who didn't just dream big, he turned those dreams into reality, not just for himself, but for others. This was the real surprise of their wedding day, the revelation of hope and possibility for so many people. 1 year after their magical wedding day, Maya and James sat in their new accessible home's garden, celebrating their first anniversary. The past year had brought more changes and joy than either of them could have imagined. "Can you believe how much has happened?" Maya asked, looking through their wedding album. She paused at a photo of their first dance, showing James standing in the exoskeleton. James wheeled closer to look at the picture. "That was just the beginning. Look at this." He handed Maya a tablet showing a news article. The headline read, "Cooper Technologies Exoskeleton Program Helps 1,000th Patient Walk Again." Maya smiled proudly. After their wedding, James's company had worked tirelessly to make the exoskeleton technology available to others. They kept the costs as low as possible and worked with insurance companies to ensure more people could access it. James used his own device for special occasions, but preferred his wheelchair for daily life. "Remember how nervous my mom was about our marriage?" Maya said, putting down the album. "Now she tells everyone about her brilliant son-in-law who's changing the world." James laughed. "Well, your mom did help us set up the foundation. She's amazing with the families we work with." The Maya and James Cooper Foundation had become their shared passion. They used part of the company's profits to help people with disabilities access new technology and opportunities. Maya had left her hospital job to run the foundation full-time, using her experience as a physical therapist to help others. "Oh, speaking of families," Maya said excitedly, "Dr. Martinez called. Everything looks good with the baby." James reached over to touch Maya's small baby bump, his eyes full of wonder. They had decided to start their family 6 months ago, and now they were expecting a daughter in 4 months. When they first announced the pregnancy, some people had asked insensitive questions about James being a father while using a wheelchair. "I can't wait to meet her," James said softly. "The nursery is almost ready. Mike helped me install the special crib that lowers so I can reach in easily." They had designed their whole house to work for their family's needs. Wide doorways, adjusted counter heights, and smart home technology made everything accessible. But more importantly, they had filled it with love and laughter. "Dr. Chen called earlier," James mentioned. "The pediatric version of the exoskeleton is ready for testing. Soon we'll be helping children walk too." Maya wiped happy tears from her eyes. Pregnancy had made her more emotional, but this news would have moved her anyway. "You're going to make so many families happy." We're going to make them happy. James corrected her. I couldn't do any of this without you. Your idea about working with physical therapists to train patients. That made all the difference. Their phones buzzed at the same time. A group message from Sarah. She had sent a photo from the hospital where she still worked. A young girl was taking her first steps using one of James's exoskeletons, her face glowing with joy. This is why we do it, Maya said, showing James the photo. Remember what you told me in therapy? James asked. That first day when I was being difficult. Maya thought back. That knowing about something isn't the same as doing it? Exactly. I knew about technology, but you taught me about helping people. Together we're doing both. The evening sun painted their garden in golden light as they sat together, planning their future. They talked about the baby coming, about new projects for the foundation, about weekend plans with their families who had become closer than ever. You know what still amazes me? Maya said, looking at her husband with love. That day you came into the hospital, we could never have imagined all this. James took her hand. I thought I'd lost everything after my accident. Instead, I found everything: love, purpose, hope. You saw past my wheelchair and showed me I could be more than my injury. And you showed me that love has no limits, Maya replied. That sometimes life's biggest challenges bring the greatest gifts. As the sun set on their perfect anniversary evening, Maya and James knew their story was more than just about them. It was about breaking barriers, changing lives, and proving that true love sees with the heart. Their biggest surprise hadn't been the exoskeleton or the company's success. It had been discovering that together they could make the impossible possible. In the end, their love story wasn't about a black woman who married a disabled man. It was about two people who saw each other's true worth and built something beautiful together. And that was just the beginning of their forever.